Why is the church always talking about money and sex? Well, it turns out those are two pretty big deals to any human being who is living life. And I hate to be a cliche, but this week we're talking about money. We are going to hopefully do it in a way that is different than what you've heard. See, a lot of churches will talk about wealth and wealth accumulation, and if you give generously to our church, then God will make you rich, but that's actually the backwards way of thinking about it. Generosity is an important part of our faith. It's an important part of discipleship, but the reason it's important is because we are tempted to define ourselves by our wealth and our resources and how much money we have. It's a serious temptation that leads us down bad roads, and the book of Daniel, chapter 5, has something to say about that, and that's what we're talking about this week.
Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching.
Hello all, welcome once again to the Kindred UMC pre-recorded live show, coming to you not live, but pre-recorded from my front room, aka Kindred Studio A. My name is Chris Hayden, and I am the pastor at Kindred UMC.
My name is Ann, and I'm the treasurer for Kindred UMC.
My name's Taylor, and I'm your local queer, non-binary exploring candidate. You said you were going to bring back fun facts this week.
You brought fun facts. It's always the third person that brings the fun facts.
Oh, got it. Okay, my bad.
I'll
bring the fun facts.
Yeah.
Was that a fun fact?
Well, it's something you've already said before, so I don't know how fun it is if we already know it. We'll work on it.
We'll work on it.
We are continuing through Daniel, the book of Daniel, and we are, well, not the whole book. We're only doing the first 6 chapters. Does anybody remember why?
Because after that, it's a apocalyptic.
Yay!
Story.
We're doing it. We're making church work now. Good.
Yay.
Yes,
I don't know that I was there for that one.
We've mentioned it a few times. If you watched the videos, anybody who's watched the videos and paid attention would know that. So Daniel, the from chapter 7 on, is the only apocalyptic literature in the Old Testament. The New Testament has more, but this is the only Old Testament apocalyptic literature. Apocalyptic literature is difficult and thick and hard to interpretate. So we're going to not interpretate it. We're going to stick with chapters 1 through 6.
Cool. There's enough apocalyptic stuff going on in the real world, right?
Yeah. Well, and I digress. I digress. Let's go back to what I was going to talk about, which is Daniel chapter 5. Each of the 6 chapters in the beginning of Daniel are their own little self-contained stories. Does anyone remember what we talked about last week, Daniel chapter 4?
Nebuchadnezzar's monologue.
Yeah, man, Ann
I haven't watched the video
killing
yet.
it.
Sorry.
It did help that Ann was literally one of our lay guests on the last live show. Yeah. Yes, it was a monologue from Nebuchadnezzar. So immediately and very abruptly, starting at chapter 5, we are basically so maybe a little old reference, but there's the Batman movies, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and then The Dark Knight Rises. And if you've ever seen The Dark Knight Rises just kind of like it jumps forward in time, and like Batman's old and retired now. And they don't explain it. They don't say like previously on the Batman trilogy. They just start you there, and then you pick it up. That's a little bit what's going on here. Okay. Nebuchadnezzar, at the beginning of chapter 5, Nebuchadnezzar has died and his son is now king. And they don't give you a previously on the book of Daniel, they just start there, okay? So the king's name, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, the new king, is named Belshazzar, which is similar to Belteshazzar, which is Daniel's name, and it's related to one of the Babylonian gods. Anyway, so we're just going to start with now we've got a new king, all right? And if you would like to read chapter 2, cheesy, crazy. If you would like to read the entire chapter, it's worth reading, chapter 5. But we're going to skip, and so I'm going to do it in 2 different parts. I'm just going to read 2 different excerpts from it and kind of talk through the gist of it, because I don't want to I don't want to burn a bunch of time reading the thing to you. You're an adult. You have the internet. You can look it up. Okay, so here we go. This is the book of Daniel, chapter 5, verses 1 through... I can't remember. Also, this is where... Have you ever heard the phrase, the writing on the wall?
Yeah.
This is where it comes from. That's a biblical reference.
Interesting.
We're going to learn all about it right now. So, chapter 5, verse 1 sounds like this. King Belshazzar made a great festival for 1,000 of his lords, and he was drinking wine in the presence of the thousands. Under the influence of the wine, so he's had a few and he's a little tipsy. Under the influence of the wine, Belshazzar commanded that they bring in the vessels of gold and silver that his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple in Jerusalem and raided it. So take all the goblets and all the fine things out of there and bring them. Had taken out of the temple of Jerusalem so that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. So they brought in the vessels of gold and silver that had been taken out of the temple of the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised the gods, remember this, praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. So, to sum up, what did we read? What did you hear? What's going on?
They went and they got the I was gonna say metals, but that doesn't make sense. Anyways, all the jewels and stuff.
Like the goblets. It's
the stuff.
Yeah, and like bowls and cups and...
Yeah, and then they drank the wine from those things.
Yeah.
And then they were like, praise the God that created these things.
And why were, what are those vessels from?
The Temple of Jerusalem.
Right. And so there's like this undercutting. There's this undermining of Yahweh, that's the Israelite name for God, Yahweh. Mm-hmm. And then what did they drink to when they drank?
The gods of gold, silver, wood,
iron.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can't remember the list either,
bronze.
But you got the idea. Yeah. Bronze, stone, wood, gold, silver, bronze. Yeah.
It's like you're playing Animal Crossing.
Yeah. So they're taking Yahweh's ceremonial vessels and they're toasting to, and the English translation when it says gods, it's a lowercase g. They're toasting to these other gods, okay? And specifically of gold, silver, bronze, stone, wood, whatever, that kind of thing. All right, so we're gonna skip ahead a little bit. Essentially what happens, very similar to most of Daniel, guess what happens to Belshazzar? He has a dream. He has a nightmare. I have too many things. He doesn't have a nightmare. A hand appears and writes words on the wall during this party, and nobody knows what they mean. And so then he calls in all his interpreters of dreams and the Chaldeans and enchanters and magicians and all the things that have been in previous chapters to interpret what these words could possibly mean, and none of them know it. And just like Batman, Daniel has retired. And so Daniel's not in that. And one of the enchanters and one of the people of the court says, there's a guy I know who used to do this really well. Maybe we can get Daniel in here to interpret it. And so Daniel comes in and he's like, at this point, he's like out of the game, like, oh, they dragged me back in kind of a thing. And he comes to interpret these words that have been written on the wall and like, what does this mean? Because if a ghostly hand writes things on the wall, it's worth asking what that might possibly mean, right. Like that's some spooky stuff, So all that takes place. Daniel comes in, picking up at verse 25. And this is the writing that was inscribed. And these are Hebrew words: mean, tekel, and parson. Those are the words. Mean, tekel, and parson. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mean, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez, which is different because it said parson and now it says Perez. Anyway, Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar, who is the new king, not Daniel's name. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed in purple. A chain of gold was put on around his neck. A proclamation was made concerning him that he should rank third in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So it's really hard. I would love to do this Socratically, but unless you understand ancient Hebrew, it's going to be really hard to be like, so what do you think that means? So those words, mean, tekel, and parson, it's really like a play on words. It's like a pun almost. And so the analogy that I came up with that I think is the easiest to kind of get us there is it would be like if on the wall in English they wrote Count Wade David, like a name, like the title, Count Wade David. And they were like, what does this mean? And then Daniel would come in and say, Count Wade David, count, because your days have been numbered. Weighed, because you have been weighed and found wanting. You've been weighed and measured and found wanting. David, because God is going to divide your kingdom among your enemies. That's what this means. It's an omen of bad things that are to come. Now, the one thing that doesn't work with that analogy, because I couldn't, if only I could find a way to make that pun work that also used currency and resource. Because mean is probably referencing mina, which is I can't remember, it's like a half a bit, or I can't remember what it is, but it's like a penny, it's a very small amount of currency. And then tekel is probably sounds like shekel, which is like $1, and then parson, Perez, that's another form, it's like a half a bit or something like that. I can't remember what it is, but they're all references to money. Now, because this is so complicated, this is such a weird story, and it's folklore, and it's got a lot of imagery, and so what were the gods that they toasted to with Yahweh's goblets and
silver,
bowls?
gold, bronze, iron, wood, stone.
Resources.
Yeah.
Money. This is about money. This story ultimately is using metaphors of money to ask the question, where do we put our faith? And so we have a king Belshazzar who's placing his faith in the gods of gold and resource, and who is willing to undermine and disgrace Yahweh, the God of grace. And we have Daniel, our hero, who says, the God of grace is going to undermine you because you've disrespected and you've put your faith in the things of this world. You put your faith in your wealth and your resource. So, I mean, it's not like we have like a wealth disparity or a wage gap or anything in our current culture. So I don't know how we might apply this lesson. But I mean, like, what comes to mind for you when we talk about especially in the West, and especially in the American, not just the American culture, but like American church? What comes to mind with faith and money and churches and money and our culture and money and resource? Like, when have you experienced those things? What stories come to mind for you?
For me, it's definitely, I grew up in Presbyterian churches and non-denominational churches. So it's very, tithe is a very, very, very big thing going on over there, which it was never explained to me how to or why to necessarily. But it was like, as soon as you start making money, you have to put pretty outrageous for a 16-year-old amount of money into the church in order to like
10%.
be doing your thing.
10%'s the minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything else is extra. 10%'s the minimum.
I think ours was 10 to 20 was kind of what was like told.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember for a while, like I was tithing like as much as I could, but I don't have money. And especially now, like I don't have anything to give other than myself at this moment. So
although first day on the job today.
Yeah. But so it was always a very big thing, but it was never really explained like why, other than it's to help the church go on mission trips, or it's to help the church pay for people or pay for things or anything like that. And I'm like, that's cool. But if I have no money for myself at all to like pay for food or a house or a car, what am I giving you money for? So that was always my kind of despair with it, was like, you're telling me to give this much amount of money that I don't have.
Yeah.
You know? But it was still like, you got to do it or you're going to hell. And I'm
that's
like,
what God wants you to do. And if you're not doing it, you're sinning.
Right. It's like, oh, okay. Like God wants me to give up like my car. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
That's my big story.
Yeah.
That makes me think of, I can remember I used to work in veterinary clinics, and you would have to do a weekend shift. So I'd have to walk the dogs on Sunday mornings. And I remember being like, oh no, like you're not supposed to do that. And my dad was like, does God want you to work and make a living?
You're working on the Sabbath.
That's right. He goes,
sinner.
But I'll never forget my dad. He goes,
the Sabbath, by the way, is Saturday, not Sunday, but whatever.
Which I had to work a whole shift on Saturday.
The Christian church
okay.
changed it to Sunday because that's when the resurrection happened. And that's, by the way, when all the Jews who were Christian, I digress. There's historical reasons, but whatever. Go ahead.
But I'll never forget. He was like, does he want you to work so that you can make a living and, like move the hell out of my house? And I was like, well, yeah. And
it's like, that's what I pray for.
Yeah, right. He's like, so
my prayer's being
go to work.
Yeah.
So you work on Sunday because that's when work is, right? Like, does God want you to put food on your table by yourself? Then you work when they tell you to, and shut up and smile. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I feel that pain where it's like, oh no, you have to do this. And as far as tithing, I found that interesting that the 10 to 20%, it was always 10% I heard, and it had to go to the church. It was very important. You couldn't give to St. Jude. You don't give to Zoe and Powers.
That's a different thing.
You don't.
That's a whole different
that
thing.
would be extra.
Yeah.
So like, oh no, you only give that. That's what you give to Jesus. Jesus gives 10%.
I'm like, do you have one of those bank things that shoots up to heaven? Like what?
So
you don't talk about the little.
So let me. There's a few things I'd like to address. One is we briefly touched on Sabbath. Let me say I'm happy to be in a denomination, that very much emphasizes pastors need to take and recognize a Sabbath, and your Sunday is not Sabbath. Your Sunday is a work day.
Yeah.
You need to find another day, any other day, where you are relaxing and connecting with God that has nothing to do with work, and you are recharging your battery. So I'm very happy to be a part of a denomination that focuses on that and is not legalistic about the day of the week that it needs to be.
See, and that's how I look at Sabbath, is like, take it when you can.
Right. Yeah. But also there is some healthiness to a little bit of legalism in that. It's like, make sure you take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that. It's good for you, and it's bad for your people if you're not doing it.
Right. Absolutely.
Whoever you are, I'm speaking from a pastor, but everyone is counted on by somebody, so whoever your people are. So that important. But I would also say the same thing about tithing. Tithing, because I'm in the business of getting babies out of bathwater, I think tithing has often been weaponized inappropriately by lots of churches, and especially what I am often outspoken against, which is prosperity gospel preachers. When a millionaire asks poor people to give them money or God will judge them and condemn them, I'm immediately like, that's evil. I won't stand for it, and I won't stay silent about it. Don't do that. If a person is a millionaire and you're paying their salary and you earn less than them, don't do that. That's not good. That's not what is healthy for you. So let me just say that.
We are collecting funds to help support a community in Rwanda through an organization called Zoe Empowers. They teach communities necessary skills, how to start a business, how to be entrepreneurs, so that not only they can support themselves, but they can help support their communities through employment and having a living wage. So if you would like to practice your generosity without fear of where it's going, without fear of it going to some rich pastor's pocket, every cent that you give to our church will go directly to supporting that community in Rwanda. Please consider giving and give generously. You can use the QR code or the links down in the description below, or you can mail a check directly to our P.O. Box. All of that is linked in the description. So please give generously.
In my experience, the idea of tithing and generosity is really at the heart of what I think this particular passage is about. It is good to set aside a portion, especially for, I assume, anyone who's listening and watching this. You probably earn more money than the vast majority of the human race. And not just today, but also historically. You have it better than just about, the fact that you have access to this means you have it better than just about anyone who's ever lived. Like pretty close percentage-wise. It is good for all of us to take a portion of what we earn and to practice setting a part of it aside for other people, so that we can not just say it to ourselves, but actually teach ourselves through action that we are not defined by material. We are not defined by our resource. We are, like, you are defined by an image of God that is uniquely placed on each person who's been created on purpose. And that's where we find our meaning and our value. And anything in this world that comes against that is against the kingdom of heaven, and like denounce it and deny it and walk away from it, And there's something about, and some of those things are within us. Some of those things are, like, none of us are perfect. I have things in me that are I want to be defined by certain things that I should not find my value in. Tithing and finances is one of those things that we as human beings are especially susceptible to that temptation. Yeah. So when tithing becomes you better or God won't love you, and it's to support my lifestyle, it goes wrong and bad, and walk away from that. However, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is something very good and healthy about taking a percentage or a portion of what you earn and acknowledging the only reason I can earn this is because God is good to me. And so I'm going to take this and be good to other people. Mm-hmm. And if you're not at a church where you have serious faith that your giving to that church is going to do that, you need to come to our church. Then you're in the wrong church. You need to come to our church. And if you can't say that honestly about our church, then let me help you find a church where you can say yes to. Because there is something good about that, and it's good for you. It's good for all of us to do that. But if you're just starting out and you're starting to save and you're starting to practice like financial health, and the idea of giving 10%, like the government's already taken like 20 or 30 of it, depending on how much you make, if the idea of giving away 10% is just like astronomical, start with $10. Yeah. Start where you can, and that's genuinely, that's where I started. I had a part-time job while I was going to college, and and this is back when I would deposit my check in person at the bank, and every time I deposited my check, I got $40 from that check in $10 bills, and I had them in a little envelope in my car, and I put $10 in the plate. And that's what I did every week. And that's because it was a church that I loved and believed in. Yeah. And then began as I could to increase that. And eventually got to the place where, and now that I'm an ordained elder, I struggle with the giving to the place that pays me But I want everyone to know your pastor donates money. I've always given to Compassion International. I give to Zoe Empowers. I give to the United Methodist Children's Home. And on occasion, I do that through our church too. Like, I literally just give our church some of the money that it paid me back, like, which is just, that's a little weird for me, and I don't know why. And there are pastors who would tell me that I need to get over that and I'm a bad pastor for doing it. And yeah, fair enough. I don't necessarily disagree with you. I don't know. Like, I just don't know where I am with it. But it is good for us. And I think that's what this story is ultimately about. It is good for us to not attach ourselves to the resources that we earn, and to not forsake, through entitlement, the grace of God that allows us to live the lives, the very, very beneficial, indulgent often lives that we get to live, particularly in the West and particularly in the United States. So that's what I've got to say about it. Any final thoughts?
I think the biggest thing to remember as a person that struggles with giving tithes is, like, you can't help people if you're not helping yourself. So, like, save to get out of your debt, save to, pay your bills. Like, make sure that you're doing these things for yourself too, because in the churches I grew up, it was like, well, give to me and then everything will be fixed. And it's like, that's not reality. If I give you all my money and then I can't pay my car payment, my car's going to get repoed. So, like, I don't know what to tell you.
I'll also say, so my wife and I have been watching, there's a YouTube channel, and I don't know the name, but for me, back in the day, it was Dave Ramsey. He was an AM radio guy.
I don't know if you just saw me roll my eyes, but
he's a very conservative guy. I wouldn't go to him for social theology, but his financial theology, I think, is pretty sound. And his financial advice is what got me out of debt after my divorce. Mm-hmm. I was saddled with thousands of dollars of credit card debt after that, and he helped me out a lot. And there's this other guy that my wife has started watching on YouTube. He's a little meaner, but it's kind of like, anyway.
Gordon Ramsay of...
yeah, right. Yeah, he's Gordon Ramsay to the financial people. But there's something about the tithe that does force us to take a look at what we're actually spending.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that the show that my wife watches, the guests come on and he's like, "What You're spending like $600 a month on Starbucks." Yeah. And they're like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "I've got your bank records. Like, you're right spending $600. And they're like, "Nuh-uh," and because they don't know that they are.
Yeah.
And then he's starting to talk with them about, like, why do you have a new iPhone every year? Why are you driving? You're paying $600 a month on a car payment? You can't afford that. What are you doing? You should be driving like a $2,000 beater that you can, something that you can at least get through on, but like, you can't be making payments. You should be doing these types of things. And because I'm a chef, and so I often, and I'm actually thinking about starting a little YouTube channel because I do this for fun. When people are like, but eating and food is so expensive. It's like, dude, I can feed a family of 4 on a gourmet dinner for like $5 a plate. Like, and I mean, like, it's not that hard. You can do this kind of things. So I'm actually thinking about starting a little YouTube channel on the side where I do, where when I make dinner, I'm just going to do that. Hey, look, here's the Instacart receipt. This cost me $40 and it's going to feed 10 people, so there's something about tithing that forces us to have those conversations with ourselves. And like one of the big ones for me was cable. And I know it's hard to imagine now, but this is when streaming was just starting to be streaming. The idea of not having cable TV was like detrimental to me.
Yeah.
It was like, I can't believe I would ever just go home and be alone. Like, that's how it felt.
Yeah.
But it was the final straw in making my budget work after my divorce. And I was like, all right, here we go. And it was a leap of faith, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And like, it forced me, one, to really take a look at where my priorities were. Do I really believe that God is in this? Do I really believe that that I and my life and the circumstances of my life are a product of grace, or is it all just random? And like, that was one of the things that really made me kind of like do that. And it wasn't fun, but it was very, very good. It was very good. So I'm sure I've gone over. Our timer broke, so, do with that what you will. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you, hopefully, some financial peace in these financially troubled times.